You're with Wayne and Jess for breakfast. We are with our Radio 97 resident lawyer, Despina Priala, and great news for New South Wales residents. Well, we hope so. There may be changes to stamp duty.
Exactly. Is it going to be a good change? We don't know yet. So we'll have to wait and see. But there are reforms in progress for New South Wales in terms of stamp duty. So I would like to let the listeners know what it's all about and how they may be able to benefit. So let's talk about what stamp duty is, first of all, because I think that's important. Stamp duty is a tax, in essence, put very simply. And stamp duty has actually been around a very long time. So in New South Wales, it's been around since 1865.
Wow. Is that true?
That's right. And in Queensland, since 1894. Yes, so a very, very long time. So the government has been benefiting from the state tax called stamp duty for a very, very long time.
Yep.
Yes, so finally we're seeing a bit of a radical reform or a different reform in New South Wales to come about next year about how that may change and how stamp duty may not be payable anymore by homeowners.
It's always a bugbear for property owners, isn't it?
Yes, well, particularly, we talked about first home buyers last week, particularly with those type of purchases, it's factored into their budget. But look, any purchaser of property has to be aware there is always stamp duty. How much is it? And it depends on the value of the property, as in how much you are buying the property for, and the purpose of the property and what you're going to use it for. Are you going to live in it as your residence, or are you going to use it for investment purposes?
But we know it's always a lump sum.
Yes, it is. Yes.
And you've got to factor that in, as you say. So
Yes.
maybe a yearly annual property tax would
Yes.
be the better option.
Yes, that's right.
So perhaps an annual property tax would be the answer?
Yes, so this is what the government is proposing, not in place yet. So instead of paying stamp duty, which is an upfront payment when you buy property, and it's based on the purchase price of the property, what they're proposing is that you completely dispense with stamp duty per se as the initial upfront payment, and you actually pay an annual property tax based on the value of the property. So it would be payable, for example, when your rates are due each year or every 6 months, depending on your council. But that is what they are currently proposing. And they're, at this point in time, they're saying about 80% of homeowners may be eligible for this. So we don't have all the specific information yet about what that means, but they are talking about a system where people opt in or opt out of this alternative to paying stamp duty. So they're not getting rid of stamp duty altogether across the board. What I believe they're going to do is provide a different way to pay this, if you could call it the property tax. So instead of paying stamp duty up front, you can opt in to pay an annual property tax based on the value of the property.
Right, so this of course means that the upfront property cost, the cost you pay to get into your house will obviously be lower if it comes in.
Well, is it going to be? And this is what we don't know. So, and this is what people are maybe caught up with, thinking, okay, I don't have to pay this big amount of stamp duty, which could be 2.5%, 3% of the purchase price of the property, not the value. So they might think, okay, well, I'm going to save, but will you? Because we don't have all the details yet about how this annual property tax is going to work. Will it increase each year? We don't know. Okay, what's it going to be based on? The value of the property. How does that work? Once you actually opt in, can you opt out? And what they have made clear so far is that it's going to run with the land. So what that means is, if you decide to opt in, when you sell the property, the person buying the property from you will inherit, if I could call it that, the system that you have chosen to opt into.
Right.
So is that going to devalue the property or increase the value of the property because of this opting in process you've chosen to do? So when you sell, that becomes part of the sale of the property. And then that raises other issues that I thought of, and that is, do you have to disclose that to a buyer that is the system when you are selling property, because in New South Wales you do disclose pretty much everything when you sell a property.
Yeah, well, you'd have to do that surely, because that would be part of the deal. You would need to know how much you're up for, surely.
That's exactly right. So it's not really touched upon yet, but I would have thought that it's a clear issue of disclosure that you as a home owner make to a buyer, particularly in New South Wales. So yeah, it's absolutely correct. The other issue is we don't know, is there going to be a maximum cap on the property tax and the value? So it would definitely increase per year. I cannot see it staying the same. But then, is it capped out at a particular value? We don't know. So is it the saving grace that perhaps everyone might think it is? We don't know. I just think that for listeners, let's not rush into perhaps, oh, well, this is a great alternative, I'm just going to barrel forward and opt in. Well, let's not do that until you get all the facts and the information first.
Because I thought it might be alluring for the initial homeowner to go, wow, I can pay this off in installments, it's going to be a fixed term, but we don't even know that yet.
Well, that's true, and of course inflation pushes up the price of the value of the land and the house, so obviously over time, if things quite possibly will go up and up and up and up. Like, for example, Sydney properties are a great example where, like, there's multi-million dollar homes down by the water in the eastern suburbs and whatever. Like, can you imagine the bill each year that you're going to have to pay for that?
That's exactly right. So careful consideration before you opt in, because it is an annual payment. So stamp duty is a one-off. It can be hefty, yes, but this is going to be an annual tax. And what I think will be one of the critical things to find out is, once you do opt in, how do you opt out? So will they give you that option? Because obviously the government will see, well, the increase of values of properties, people will become quite savvy about that. Oh, I want to opt out of the process. Well, can you? We don't know yet. So it might be a trap or it might not be, but the thing here is to have some careful consideration once all the information is published.
Well, based on the knowledge we have so far, the information we've got, perhaps we should see how people feel about this, whether or not they'd opt in with the idea or they're not for it at all.
I think that's a great idea, and that's what I was going to put to listeners, that perhaps if you have a view on this, whether if you were faced with this particular choice, would you opt into such a system or would you not opt in? I think that's a great idea, and I think that listeners perhaps can email yourselves at the station, or can call here or call our office and just give their opinion. Would you opt in or would you opt out? What do you think?
Any idea of the timeline on this, when we might see firstly the ideas put forward by the government, and then when it might actually be made into law?
Not at this stage. So the fact that they're publishing the reforms, it usually from the time they publish something like this, it's perhaps a 6-month wait time, but we just don't know. So we will certainly keep abreast of the developments, and I'll be here to let all the listeners know about the updates and when it's going to commence.
But the beauty of this, you can have the power. We may see the change come into effect based on surveying people in the area.
Yes, that's right. So listeners, if you want to have your opinion heard and you want to give that opinion, absolutely you should email to the station and or ring and say, well, this is what I would do. I think it's a great system, or I think it's a terrible system. I would opt in, I would opt out. This is what my opinion is, and I want to be heard.
Yeah, and now is a good time to be doing it.
Absolutely.
While the government is still looking at their options.
Absolutely, and certainly if there's enough information, I'm more than happy to take that to the state government.
Breakfast at radio97.com.au. Otherwise, we can Google you, Priala Legal. Now, when we put Priala, Priala, all of your channel comes up, your YouTube, anything you've done, including your address at Runaway Bay and your phone number, all your details are there.
Absolutely, it all comes up. So very easy for anybody to find me and the office and the website and the YouTube channel, the whole lot.
Yep, so it's Priala. If you put that into Google, you'll find all of the details for Despina.
Thank you. Yes.
Otherwise, we look forward to having you next week, Thursday. Always my favourite day to have you in.
Thank you, same here. Look forward to it.